Hello everyone, this is chapter 15, part 5. This is the final part of the chapter Monopoly. So in the previous part 4, we talked about how, monopolies are neither allocatively nor productively efficient. So therefore, because a monopolist produces less and charges a higher price, okay, there's some loss in economic efficiency, or economic surplus is definitely lower, right? So in this last part, we'll answer that question: how big are the losses in economic surplus due to monopoly? And we'll talk about government policy towards monopolization. Okay, how big are the losses in economic surplus due to monopoly? It depends on the market power. Okay, market power is defined as the ability to charge a price that is greater than marginal cost. Okay, so I'm just gonna draw it real quick, very fast for you. Remember when that monopolist actually fell in the hands of a perfectly competitive firm fell in the hands of a monopolist? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna just draw marginal cost, demand curve, marginal revenue here. So I am just gonna focus on the output determination. This is how much a monopolist will produce. Go hit the demand curve, right? This is its price. Let's find the marginal cost at this QM level. Here we go. Monopolist is charging a price that's much above the marginal cost. So this is the marginal benefit to society, the price of the product, right? It exceeds the marginal cost. Yikes, okay? Definitely not allocatively efficient. Erase all. Okay, so even the impact of a monopoly or the loss in the economic surplus depends on the magnitude of the market power, or the ability to charge a price that's greater than marginal cost. So currently, we have very few truly competitive, perfectly competitive markets, such as agriculture. However, many people would argue otherwise, because even in agriculture, we have some huge agricultural companies that dominate the market. So we have few competitive markets, therefore we are going to see some loss in efficiency. So Harberger, an economist, says that efficiency loss due to market power is very small. It is very small, and he basically calculates that if every industry were to become perfectly competitive in the US, okay, so in every industry, we see many companies producing identical output or very similar outputs, no entry barriers. The gain would be less than 1% of the GDP per person. So GDP is the gross domestic product. Okay, so it would affect our per person production by 1 percentage points. Schumpeter says that economic process depends on technological progress. Economy benefits from market power. Technological progress happens when you have constant innovations or research and development, R&D. And Schumpeter says that economy benefits from market power. So we may see higher prices. For instance, I complain all the time about my high price of my internet and cable. It is extremely high, and I'm pretty sure the marginal cost of my cable is almost zero to those companies, because once you lay those cables, they have already incurred the cost of deals with other companies. So the cost of my cable service, my internet service, to them is negligible, but they're charging me over $100. So higher prices are the cost you have to pay for benefits of innovation and new products. So some people disagree, and they say a great number of products are developed by smaller firms, such as Google. Google was when it was at the startup stage, it started in a garage, just like Apple products. Yes, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak actually started Apple out of their garage. Okay, so there's some disagreement. Let's talk about government policy towards monopolization. Okay, so collusion in the United States is illegal. Okay, collusion is defined as agreement among firms to charge the same price or otherwise not compete is illegal. So two gas stations, okay, or let's say there's a small town, there's town with 20 gas stations, medium-sized town, and they cannot just go on a table, sit around table. I'm putting the owners of gas stations around this table, and they're setting the price. Let's charge $5 for gas. You cannot do that. Explicit collusion is illegal. We have in the United States laws called antitrust laws. These are the laws that aim to eliminate collusion and promote competition among firms. Sherman Act of one of the earliest ones is the Sherman Act of 1890 outlawed monopolization. Look, this is different from monopoly. Monopolization means you have a competitive industry with many producers like this. However, you act like a big one company, monopoly, okay? That is called monopolization. So there's no law that prevents you from being, the only diamond producer in the world. However, you can start off as perfectly competitive and then become the only producer. So Sherman Act outlawed monopolization. Salary-Kefauver Act of 1950s. Okay, so here's this part. Salary-Kefauver Act of 1950s made mergers harder. Mergers mean two or more firms coming together. Okay, so here's the little you can find this in the book. Here's little history in the US. I just talked about Salary-Kefauver Act. We talked about Sherman Act. And feel free to stop this video now and read all these different acts. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Mergers are, as I said, defined as two or more firms coming together to become just one firm. There are two types of mergers. Horizontal mergers are those mergers between firms in the same industry. For instance, iPhone and Galaxy, Samsung, Galaxy, well, not Galaxy is just a model. I'm sorry. Apple's iPhone's division, iPhone's division, and Samsung smartphone, Galaxy division merging would be an example of a horizontal merger. Okay, so you're operating in the same industry. This happens a lot in the airline industry. Airline industry has witnessed many different airline companies merging in one company. Okay, so whenever you want to merge like this, you may be you are more than likely to face government action against you. Okay, so this happened to AT&T and T-Mobile. They tried to merge. However, their merger was contested. Why? Because if they merged, it's called monopolization. They would cover a large portion of the market. For instance, Dell and Apple Computers. Dell is a Texan personal computer company. If it merged with Apple Computers, that would be an example of horizontal merger. Let's talk about vertical mergers. This is the merger between firms at different steps of production. Vertical mergers are less likely to be contested by the US government. Okay, Why? Because they don't really, most of times, cause monopolization. Examples would be Apple computers with HP printers. Obviously, these are complements, right? I have a Mac computer, but my printers, HP printers, are one of the best brands of printers. So if Apple computers merge with HP printers to actually bundle them up and sell them, that would be an example of vertical merger. That doesn't constitute a threat to actually, cause a monopoly. Okay, so this concludes our chapter 5.